These are a couple of interviews on TalkTV in the UK, which went viral. Same interviewer here, Julia Hartley. We're going to play two of these. One is crazier than the next. And so the first one is from Dr. Mustafa Barudi. Here is Julia Hartley. Man, this is actually the milder of the two.
You don't approve of...
And do you think that Israel is a democratic country?
I know that Israel is a democracy. They have elections.
No. This man is now has 4 courts against him because of 4 cases of corruption. This man knows if the war stops,
we haven't got time to do the entire history of Benjamin Netanyahu, who is not a popular figure in Israel. I'm not here to defend Benjamin Netanyahu. Mustafa, is it possible to...
Whenever I speak...
He's here to speak. You're the interviewer. I'm not here to defend Benjamin Netanyahu. It doesn't matter what you're here to do. You have a guest on the show, and you're obviously more interested in railroading him than you are giving him a chance to make his points, because, as will be revealed very shortly, you know nothing of what you speak. Absolutely nothing.
Right.
Whenever I speak about Palestinian rights or Palestinian situation, you claim it is history. I'm talking about what's happening today.
No, I know, and
this is not history.
Can we just... You talked about how you don't want Israel. You're saying Israel, that October the 7th happened. You're placing that in historical context. I understand that. Please don't say that again. We don't have time for it. You've made that point 5 times already.
I don't know what you have time for.
Oh, my God. For the love of God, let me finish the sentence, man.
Oh, my God.
Maybe you're not used to women talking. I don't know. But I'd like to finish a sentence.
Wow.
Anyway, so...
No, you are misleading the public now by claiming
Right, I've got 20 seconds left. I'm not even going to bother trying to answer. If you don't think Israel's reaction is acceptable, what would have been an acceptable reaction to you? You've got 10 seconds left.
To end occupation and allow peace to prevail for both people.
That's their reaction. Brilliant. Yeah. Sorry
there you go. He did it in 4 seconds. He gave him 10 seconds. He gave you his answer.
No, and then she fucking slams him on the way out.
No, I know. I'll get you on the way out. On the way out. But yeah, that's a perfectly legitimate answer.
Under pressure from a fucking psycho who you just have to wonder who the fuck put this woman under contract to ask people questions about serious matters on TV.
Absolutely unbelievable. And yes, she takes a swipe at him at the end.
Occupation and allow peace to prevail for both people.
That's their reaction. Brilliant. Yeah. Sorry to have been a woman speaking to you, but there you are, Doctor.
Wow. Wow. Folks, that was the appetizer.
What did he say to even invite that? He was perfectly pleasant, polite, trying to maintain some composure with this fucking sick maniac screaming at him in a completely unprofessional way. I mean, I guess this is the same outfit that has Piers Morgan on, right?
Yes, and Piers.
So I guess they just want people who are going to do barking at the moon and creating moments that are clippable and viral.
Oh, it's tabloid. There's a tabloid.
It's tabloid, right?
But Piers, at least is an interviewer. He at least is an interviewer. This woman has no business on the air. I'm sorry. I mean, and that was just a taste, folks. This is the bigger one and the better one to demonstrate my point. So this is an interview with former Labour MP Chris Williamson. Here is a second piece of video. This is about 3 minutes. This is extraordinary.
I think a ceasefire would benefit, because the concern is, by those who are not calling for a ceasefire, including Keir Starmer and the Prime Minister of the Conservative government as well, is that actually a ceasefire only benefits Hamas, who can reorganize themselves and then can continue their attacks on the Israeli civilian people. Do you think that actually a ceasefire will in any way benefit the ordinary people of Gaza, ordinary civilians, including children?
What an unbelievably stupid question. Do you believe a ceasefire would benefit the ordinary people of Gaza? You ask that question with a straight face after 20,000 plus civilians, most of whom women and children, have been killed. Again, I understand it's a tabloid outlet. I understand sensationalism is the point. In what universe does this woman have any business on the air? How can you ask a question like that? How can you ask a question like that? Let's hear his answer.
Well, they're being massacred on a daily basis, Julia, at the moment.
There you go.
So, of course, a ceasefire would be beneficial to the people living in
Why are they being
Gaza, which is,
massacred?
let's remember, is a concentration camp.
It's not a concentration camp.
Well, I'm sorry,
How
Julia.
dare
it's the
you use
largest
that phrase?
open-air
How
prison.
dare you?
Well, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. Are Palestinians
What's the
working
definition of
gas chambers in Gaza?
Julia, what is the definition of a concentration camp?
I'm just so appalled.
She does not know.
You seem like
She
a
does
normal
not know.
person.
No, she pivots right off of that. She pivots right off of that.
Her job,
Unbelievable.
Her job is to just channel this outrage for people who like that kind of thing and for people who don't. Like, very clearly, they just want viral clips. How would it benefit people who, I mean, this is something else we're going to have to cover this week on one show or the other. You know, the UN came out and said this is the greatest humanitarian crisis they've ever seen. What's brewing right now in Gaza? How would it benefit them?
How would it benefit
Sick of.
Seem like a normal person with normal values.
They have a fence around them.
And
she should be sent to Gaza.
They are regularly bombarded by the Israeli regime. What an absolute outrage. And how you can defend a regime which is behaving worse than Nazis, actually, in some respects.
Worse than Nazis. There we go.
Yes,
worse than
absolutely.
Nazis.
Because what we
by
are
the numbers.
seeing, thousands of children have been murdered by this Israeli regime.
Why don't we just save time? Why don't you just come on this show and just shout, I hate Jewish people?
Children are being killed at a faster rate in Gaza than in the concentration camps.
Yes,
That's
by the numbers, they are worse than Nazis. By the numbers.
Yes, not in terms of gross body count yet, but in terms of their pace. Children being killed at a faster pace in Gaza than in the concentration camps.
And save everyone time.
What do you say about the Jewish people then that have joined the rallies in some marches in support of a ceasefire, in support of the Palestinian people? What do you say about them, Julia? Because there are thousands of Jews who are utterly opposed.
There are thousands.
Okay, so she just called him an anti-Semite, and he said, well, then what do you have to say about the thousands of Jews who are protesting for a ceasefire? Notice what she did? She looked down at the table. She had nothing to say about that. She had to think of the next cheap point to make, and here it comes.
Tens of thousands of Jews in this country who are terrified about what is happening because of people like you who are basically saying you support terrorist organizations that don't think that Israel or the Jewish people have a right to exist.
Okay, first of all, Jews, to the extent that we are terrified, it's actually because of people like you, Julia, and because of people like Benjamin Netanyahu, who are killing 1,000 children a week. And when you say that to criticize Israel is to criticize Jews, it is you who endanger us, not Chris Williamson.
Because you are telling people, sane, rational people, which in spite of what you might have heard, I believe most people are, who can understand a horrific crime against humanity when they see one on a daily basis. And you telling people that that is synonymous with the Jewish identity and Jewish people does nothing but create anti-Semitism.
Exactly. And here comes really, I think, the coup de grace.
This country who are terrified about what is happening because of people like you who are basically saying you support terrorist organizations that don't think that Israel or the Jewish people have a right to exist.
The terrorist organization is the Israeli regime. They are the terrorists.
They're a democratically elected government. They're a democratically elected government.
You know who else were democratically elected? The Nazi Party.
They were.
The Nazi Party.
They were.
And you just said, you know, this whole issue of Nazis came up, right? Oh, you can't say that Gaza is a concentration camp. You can't compare what's happening to the Gazan people to what the Nazis did to the Jews. Are there gas chambers in Gaza? Therefore, your comparison's way off base. Israel, they're not a terrorist state. Their government is democratically elected. So was the Nazi government. How can you say that? How can you go on the air and say that? Piers, please talk to the bosses at the network. I understand you're trying to do a WWE version of the news, but this is extreme even for that. This is debasing even for that. You see the way she conducts interviews, the way she shouted over the last guest. This is one absolutely insane point after the other, starting with, would it benefit the people of Gaza to call for a ceasefire, and ending at you can't call Israel terrorists because their government was democratically elected, while just a minute ago insisting that you couldn't compare Israel to the Nazis because there were no gas chambers in Gaza? Unbelievably ignorant, unbelievably unintelligent.
Well, there are also a lot of contradictions here, because you're saying that Netanyahu's not popular in Israel, but you're saying it's a democracy, and you're saying that the Jewish people are just defending themselves. These things don't go together. Okay, so if he's truly in power democratically, and the Israeli people must support him, he's popular enough to be in office. Why is he in office if he's so unpopular? And you're claiming it's a democracy. Okay, so this Netanyahu represents the Israelis. Now, if you're not defending Netanyahu, then you're not defending the people who put him in office. So what are you talking about?
Right. They say that the Palestinians deserve to be slaughtered because they elected Hamas. They elected Hamas with Israel's help. But I mean, like, nothing you say even makes sense on its own terms, and it's just unbelievably ignorant. I've never seen ignorance like this. This rivals like the Whoopi Goldberg saying the Holocaust wasn't about race. This is on that level. And even
Whoopi, like if Michael Rappaport had a show.
It's like if Michael Rappaport had a show. Exactly.
They are not a prescribed terrorist organization, which Hamas is.
Because the Palestinians living in Israel have not got a vote. So don't give me that nonsense about.
There are plenty of Arabs. No, if you're not an Israeli national, and there are plenty of Arab Israelis who are, you do have a vote in Israel.
Well, I'm sorry, Julia. You need to actually look that there are tens of thousands, if not millions, of Palestinians living in the area outside of Gaza, who do not have a vote. And indeed, it's an absolutely apartheid regime. There's no doubt about that.
It's an apartheid regime. It's not an apartheid regime. I mean, for goodness sake,
based on what?
Okay, let me. Apartheid regime. There is nothing you can.
Hold on a minute.
You just talk nonsense.
Okay, and once again, because not everyone will have heard this, and this is very important, because they often invoke this talking point, that it can't be an apartheid regime because they have Arabs who are citizens. Okay, those are people who managed to hold on through the Nakba and not get driven out. Those are those people and their descendants. Now, why do they allow them? For this reason, because they deploy them anytime they need to defend themselves against accusations that they're an apartheid regime. If you are Palestinian, you cannot get Israeli citizenship even by marriage. So this is this little population that they use to claim that they're not an apartheid regime. But if you are not among these people who managed to hold on in that region through the Nakba, and you are not Jewish, you are not getting citizenship in Israel.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just one thing after another. I mean, and you wonder why some people just cannot learn this issue. It's because of that. Like, thankfully, I think most people are starting to see through that. Most people are able to circumvent that and actually get real information online. But to the people for whom the TV is still the news, and there are still, sadly, a lot of people like that, if you watched that and got an understanding of this issue through interviews like that, you are just hopeless. And I mean, that is just, look, I'm not for canceling. I'm not for censorship. I'm not for any of that. But if you run a news organization, she's got no business on the air. She should be able to start a YouTube channel. She should be able to talk about her Instagram, Twitter. I'm not saying deplatform her, but I'm saying if you run a news channel, how can you have someone that ignorant on the air? How?
It's a disgrace.
She can come here. She can compete with us, all for that. Fine. Social media is all fair. But on a news TV network, somebody's actually going to hire you to espouse your opinions. A top-down structure actually puts someone like that on the air to do news interviews. Yeah, it's a disgrace. Absolutely a disgrace.
Well, just asking the question, how would a ceasefire benefit people who are being fucking slaughtered by the thousands weekly? That should be disqualified. That should get you fired, asking a question like that.
Right. Yeah. No, just unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
Please clap.